Hello, everybody. This is episode one of this unnamed podcast. I don't have a name for it yet, but soon. I have a few that I've been, thinking of, and I don't really have a set in stone name yet, though. Uh, for this first episode, we're going to be talking about music and different albums in history of music. Well, I'm going to go back to like the 70s and up because I don't really listen to a lot of music before that time. But I'm sure there's great music that exists before the 70s. But for the most part, the music that I listen to is mainly 1970 and up. But today I'm going to be talking about albums that have changed my life, albums that have changed my perspective on different music genres, and basically altered my way of thinking with the way music is made. So the first album I want to talk about today is "Killing in the Name of" by Rage Against the Machine. This was mind blowing the first time I heard this album. I was like, I want to say like 12 or 13 when I first heard this. Um, and I had listened to like heavier stuff before that, but not like this heavy. I'd listened to like Guns N' Roses and AC/DC and like basic bands like that. Um, but I never listened to anything like heavier than that. And one of my buddies showed me this, and he was like, "Dude, you gotta check out this album. It's fucking nuts." And I was like, "Okay." Well, I think it was just a song at first. Um, I think it was like a song by Rage Against the Machine that he had me listen to, and it wasn't even on Killing in the Name of. Um, but I listened to that song and I was like, "What? This band is crazy. This is like hard shit. I never even knew this kind of shit existed." Well, I knew probably it existed, but I was just first time I'd ever been introduced to it. And so I was like diving in, and back then, when I was like 12, 13, I know a lot of people probably relate to this too. The best way to listen to music for free without like buying like a actual copy, like a CD or I don't even know what else there was. I guess there was like vinyl records and cassettes still being made, and people were still buying them, I guess, but it wasn't as big as like a CD. But the internet started to blow. I remember the internet started to blow up around like 2006, 2007. But we didn't have in my house. We didn't have an actual like desktop computer until like I couldn't even tell you. It was like around like 2000 like 9. So like 3 or 4 years late. And when we got that, I was like super into YouTube, and I would watch YouTubers, and that's how I listened to my music before like these streaming services like Apple Music and Spotify and SoundCloud. I guess now you can consider that a streaming website. Before all that, there was just YouTube, and I still sometimes listen to YouTube. Like I still sometimes use YouTube as a platform for listening to music occasionally, but most of the time I just use Spotify because it's the easiest. But I remember after being showed this band, um, I had uh, I had dove in on YouTube and listened to like the full album, the full Killing in the Name of album, because that was like the most popular. Because I looked up, I was like, okay, what's the most popular like shit by these guys? Because I just heard the song was "Balls on Parade." That's the song I heard that my buddy showed me. I think he had it on his phone or something. He had like, because we all had like, we didn't have iPhones or anything back then. He had it like on his like little shitty like like flip phone. I don't know. It wasn't a flip phone, but it was like more of a BlackBerry type. And he had like the song like downloaded onto his phone or something. And that's kind of how we listened to our music before listening on YouTube. We listened it that way. Because people would send each other ringtones and shit, and he had that ringtone. I don't know how he got it, but that's how, and he had like a quarter of the song, but like we were still like, oh shit, yeah. But yeah, we also had like, old CDs from our parents and stuff, and that's kind of how I listened to like bands like Guns N' Roses and AC/DC, you know. And he had this on his phone and showed me that, and then afterward, I guess it would have been like, uh, I don't really know when he showed it to me, but when I got the internet, the desktop computer, I'm pretty sure we had internet, but we didn't have like a family computer where we could all like go on and do stuff. It was around like 2009 ish when we got that, and I went in on YouTube and I just started, searching this band. I looked up like what was the most important album for this band, and it was "Killing in the Name of." And I listened to the song first. Actually, I listened to the song "Killing in the Name of," and I was like, "What the shit is this? This is insane!" There was such rebellion to the music, and there's so much energy like behind what this band was giving out. It was insane. It was like the craziest shit I could hear as a 12, 13-year old. And I first listened to the song, and then later on I listened to the rest of the album, like "Know Your Enemy" and what's another song, "Take the Power Back." I don't have the list up right now, but I like the actual list of the songs on the album, but I know like you know a general idea of what's on it. But yeah, so I listened to this whole album, and then my initial take was this band is insane. The Now looking back and even listening to it today, I still have the same perspective, even after listening to even heavier shit and even more outrageous music. Uh, I still have the same perspective that this band was way ahead of their time. In the 1990s, I believe this album was released, and I just they were way ahead of their time. All these bands that came after them that like were like this like rap rock. It wasn't even rap rock because you could consider like Beastie Boys, like License to Ill. You can consider that like rap rock, but this was like heavy. This was like metal mixed with like hip hop, and at the time, I had no idea that like this was even a thing. I was blown away by this, and their lead vocalist insanely talented, and Tom Morello on the guitar. Forget about it. That shit is insane. I was literally like it was something like way out of the ordinary for me when I first listened to this album, and I'll never forget it. And I think I was like 16, 17. I started collecting vinyl records because vinyls are so punk rock, dude. But I started collecting vinyl records, and this was like one of the first vinyl records I got. I remember, um, and one of the it's embarrassing to say, but like I really enjoyed the album, but there was a bunch of other albums that I wanted to get on vinyl first before this one. Like I had so many in mind before this one, but this one like stood out to me because I really just loved the cover art. The cover art on this album is so punk rock, dude. It's so insane. Like I didn't even know I didn't even know the history behind what the album cover represents because I later learned about it in some class in high school. Uh, the the Buddha thing where they all these Buddhist monks basically protested against their government by lighting themselves on fire, and then Rage Against the Machine used one of these images for their album cover of "Killing in the Name of," and it's so badass. It's one of my favorite album covers to this day, actually. But that was, it's embarrassing to say, but that was one of the most that was one of the reasons why I picked that vinyl before like a bunch of others that were on my list when I started collecting vinyl records. Um, but yeah, Killing in the Name of, solid album, is fantastic. It changed the way I ever could even perceive metal music. It was the first metal like album I heard. So I mean, I had no idea what I was even diving into at that point. Um, but after that, it kind of influenced me to listen to even more metal bands. So I kind of blame Rage Against the Machine for that one. Um, but I started diving into other ones after that, and Rage Against the Machine is the reason for that, especially the album Killing in the Name of. That's just one. It's one of my favorite albums. I'd probably put it in my top 20 maybe. I don't know. Fuck top 20 list. I don't even I don't give a shit about them. Like if you have a top 20 list, why? Like that's so stupid. Like just say you enjoy the album or the movie or whatever it is. Just say you enjoy it. You don't need to put it like, dude, that's my top 20. What? No, stop. It doesn't matter. Like you just like it, okay? Anyway, rant over. I'm going to move on to the next album here. This next album is a hip hop album. It was around the same time. I believe so. No, it had to have been before it. I guess yeah, because I listened to like CDs for the most part before I had the platform of YouTube to listen to my music, and I had a bunch of old CDs from my parents, like AC/DC stuff like that. But I also had my sister. This is a crazy story. My sister used to like make CDs, like how in the 80s they would like make cassette tapes. They would make like mixtapes, but my sister would make like mixed CDs because this is before we had a desktop computer. She would go to her friend's house, and her friend's house already had like a desktop computer that the whole family could sit at and do stuff at. And they would make CDs there. And she made uh, an Eminem CD, and you already know where this is going. She made an Eminem CD, and I was forbidden to listen to it. I was forbidden, if I can say that word right. I was forbidden to listen to it because she didn't. I don't know. She just didn't vibe with me listening to the CD. I was really young though. I had to have been like 9. So yeah, this was way before. I was like 8 or 9. This is way before uh, I discovered Rage Against the Machine. But she had an Eminem mix CD. It wasn't even. It was like a like a copyrighted. It was like a pirated version of uh, the Eminem Show. Now the Eminem Show is still to this day my favorite Eminem album. Um, Even with like, well, his I don't really care for any of his newer stuff at all, and I didn't care for the Lose Yourself, like the 8 Mile soundtrack. I didn't give a shit about that. The Slim Shady LP, the one that was released before the Eminem Show, um, I kind of like, I guess. It's not as, but the Eminem Show, if I were to think of an Eminem album that sticks out in my head, it would definitely be Encore. No, I'm just fucking with you. It would definitely be the Eminem Show, not Encore. That'd be sad. But the Eminem Show was the first Eminem album that I listened to, and this was a whole nother world for me. I snuck in when my sister was gone. She's my older sister, so uh, she was off doing older sister stuff with her friends or whatever, and I snuck into their room one night, and I took this CD, this album, and I had one of those little like CD things, those like portable CD things. You put your CD in, and then you put your headphones in, and you just listen. And it had those fucking early 2000 headphones, those things that like those wraparound headphones that barely sit on your ears. If you know what I'm talking about, shout out, you know what's up. But those little tiny things that you put on your earlobes and they barely fit. I had some of those, and I had this little portable CD player, and I put this CD in because she told me not to listen to it. So as an 8, 9 year old, and you're told not to, listen to something or do something, you're like, fuck it, I'm gonna do it. You know what I'm saying? Like duh, like that's the stupidest shit you could say to an 8 or 9 year old. So I snuck in and I took this CD and I put it in, and I didn't even know what to expect. But the order of the CD was like mixed up. Somehow I don't. They didn't burn it right or make it right. However you make CDs, I don't fucking know. That's some crazy shit. Like that they even did that. Now we got all the streaming platforms and all this good jazz, but before you had to burn it on a CD if you wanted to listen to it, if you didn't have internet access to listen to it on YouTube or something. I'm sure there was other platforms like YouTube for you to like look up a song or like something like that, but they used to like download music and then burn them onto CDs. Excuse me. And then they would listen to them that way. But I stole this and I put it in. The order was mixed up. So the first song that came on was Without Me. And I was like, what in the fuck am I listening to immediately? Because I put it in and I was like, I'm not supposed to be listening to this. And then it started playing. And then I was like, I'm definitely not supposed to be listening to this. So when I realized I wasn't supposed to be listening to it, I was like, I'ma listen to it. So I kept on listening to it. But the first song that I heard by Eminem was Without Me. And oh my God, what a game changer. That was a game changer for me in music, in my music history. Um, Completely oblivious as to what I even heard. I was I was so young and I was just blown away. And I remember talking to, and oh yeah, forgot all about this, but I had a buddy, like a friend, from the school I went to. We used to go out on the plate while everyone else was playing. We both had these fucking CD things, and I was like a nerd, so I would like take it and listen to it like at recess and shit. I don't know why I remember this, but I would like take it out, and he had one too, and he was like, "No way, you got one too?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah!" And he's like, "I got some CDs." This kid listened to weird shit. I don't even know like to this day what that kid was listening to. It was like some heavy shit, and we were like 8 or 9. Like he's like, "Yeah, dude, I took some of my parents' CDs, and it was like some weird shit. Like it was like some like." Listening to it now, I'd probably just be like, oh, it was probably like something like not even hardcore at all. It was probably just like, I don't even know what, like, I'm trying to think of like he had a variety too. Like it wasn't just one genre. Like one day he'd bring like Megadeth or something fucking nuts, like, or like Slipknot or something ridiculous, like for like an 8 year old to listen to. And then the next day he would listen, he'd have like some hardcore gangster rap or something. Like, but it was always like intense music that he brought. But and he would let me listen to it. But I brought I remember because I snuck that Eminem CD uh, to school with me, and I was like, it was like I had contraband or something in my backpack. I was like, this is nuts. Like I got this fucking CD that's hardcore shit. No one even knows it. No one even knows that this is in my brain right now. This like two trailer park girls go right. You know what I'm saying? Like it was just crazy that like I was so young when I first listened to this, and I showed him, and the kid was like, "That's hard." He never heard it either. Like, and it wasn't like brand new or anything. We were like, this would have been like, I'm trying to think. Like this would have been like around like 2005, 2006, something like that. So it wasn't like brand new. That album was like 3 or 4 years old by then. But we both listened to that and we would jam out to that shit like every day. I don't know why I remember this, but I just remember when I first heard that album, I listened to it a ton, and I was so young, but I didn't really listen to a lot of hip hop either. That was like uh, that was my first hip hop album I listened to. And I didn't listen to like a ton of it. But when I heard that, I was like, yo, this rap shit, This rap shit, I'm digging it. Um, but yeah, that was my first experience with an Eminem album, and still to this day, that is like my favorite Eminem album. I will never forget it. I'm trying to think of some other songs on there. I'm only naming like three to four, like I did with the Rage album, but I'm trying to think. Let me think real quick. I really well, Without Me, obviously, um, and I also like White America's Good. That one was weird to me too. I was just because you're 8 and 9, and the song's like pretty political, so you're like, what the shit am I even listening to? But yeah, White America, Without Me. There's some other good ones on there. I can't really think right off the top of my head. I like Haley's song now. I didn't really like it then, but I like the Haley song, the ballad that he sings. I like that one. That was good. The whole album is just it just kind of hits me hard like every time I hear it. It's still one of my favorite hip hop albums of all time, and it's definitely one of my favorite albums of all time. I if I were one of those people to put it in a top fucking whatever list, I'd probably put it up there. It'd probably be pretty high up there. Let me let me let me see what my next one is. So we're kind of going all over the place with genres here, but fuck it. Uh, the next one I want to talk about is "Songs About Jane" by Maroon 5. I love this album. I love this album. Like I can't even express. This was to me. This is when I believe like pop music, and everyone listened to pop music when they were young because it was like what was on the radio, you had to listen to it. It was just playing. So this is when I believe pop music and alternative rock music, which we'll get into an alternative stage that I went through later, but as of right now, I'm gonna talk about this album, uh, which is more pop, but it has some alternative influence. This is to me when alternative music and pop music blended, like alternative bands and pop, the pop genre, kind of blended together, and then they had this crazy offspring of like uh, like poppy alternative bands like Maroon 5, All American Rejects, and Fall Out Boy. I remember these bands very well because they would play shit on the radio that I just hated. Most pop music at the time, they were just repetitive. I couldn't get into them. I was like, please just turn this shit off. But something about these bands, when they first hit the scene, they had still some alternative like vibe to them. So it was different, and that's like the definition of alternative is different. So I liked it because I liked different music. Um, so when I first heard this album, I can't remember how old I was. I was pretty young too. Even though the album, I'm pretty sure was released around the same time as the Eminem album I talked about, but um, I don't quote me on that. I'm not really sure, but when the first time I heard this album, I was around. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I listened to it on YouTube. Yeah, so I had to been around. I think I was like a little older than from from when I heard the Rage Against the Machine album. I think I was like 13 or 14. I'd heard the songs on the radio when I was young, but you never really like. I just tuned them out. Um, but I was like 13 or 14, and I remember because that's when you start, getting them feels, when you start like going through some changes. But I started getting into like some more feely kind of music, and Maroon 5 kind of helped me transition into, well, specifically that album. I didn't listen to any other Maroon 5. I'm not a fan of that shit, but this album helped me transition into more feely kind of music, uh, and help me, get in my feels and whatever, whatnot. But I remember hearing She Will Be Loved especially, and just falling like head over heels for that song, because I had this huge crush on this girl that I went to school with, and like I like listened to this song and I was like, ooh, like getting into my feels or whatever, some lame ass shit, but like whatever, I don't give a shit, judge me. But I remember hearing that song and then I was like, this is some good shit. Like I never really realized it when I heard it like on the radio and stuff when I was young. And then I listened to the full album same way, having YouTube. And I listened to like the full album. I was around 14 and I just remember being like star stunned by like the how every song hit something, like most of the time you listen to an album and you're like, skip that one, fuck that song, who cares? But with this album, like every song like hit like hard. Harder to Breathe is a fantastic example of this. It's so like right out of the gates, like they hit you with that one, and then they throw in some ballads. I just think it's done very well, especially for like that manufactured kind of sound. This was around the time when like rock bands were becoming like they weren't as raw as they used to be. I didn't know any of this then, but like I know this now by listening to it. But this was around the time like those rock bands were becoming more manufactured and pop sounding, like Maroon 5 and Fall Out Boy or whatever. And even with that element, this album still holds up to me. Like I still think like it has it has like a it has like a manufacturing sound to it, but like it's not like a Nickelback album, like it still has like its roots and it still has like the gusto that a normal alternative like 90s album would have. Like it still has like the aesthetic of like a Smashing Pumpkins album, or let me think. I'm trying to think of some 90s bands that I really like. Yeah, something like Smashing Pumpkins. Yeah, that's kind of like not like Oasis or some shit like that because those are poppy groups, but it had like a Smashing Pumpkins kind of vibe to it, and I really dug it the first time I listened to it all the way through. Especially "She Will Be Loved." Everyone knows that song. Everyone listened to that song. And if you don't know this song, where have you been? Well, I can imagine if you don't know it and you're like young, then like I get that, but you'll find out one day that this album is really good. I think this if I were to have a top 20 list, which I don't because I don't believe in them, this would probably be up there as well. That's why I wrote it down when I was going through all the albums that I've really enjoyed over the years. Um, Let me see where I'm at on time. Um, for this podcast series, I'm going to be talking about whatever, and just see if people enjoy it. But, and I think I'm going to keep it around like 40 minutes, something like that. So, if you want less, which I hope you don't, because I enjoy, talking about certain stuff, uh, just let me know. But if you want more, I'd be more than welcome to do that as well, because I just love doing this. It was an idea I had, and I was like, I'm just gonna try it. It seems like fun. People have been doing it. This podcast, crazy kind of it's like a crave going on right now. Everyone's doing a podcast and everyone's having fun with it. And even if you aren't, like, you don't already have like a following or something, because a lot of people that I watch have had like mediocre followings before they started a podcast. And then it just kind of like uh, it blew their following up even more. Um, and it was just like a simple idea that they had. Even I don't have a following, but like I still want to do this because it just seemed like fun. So yeah, I'm gonna keep my episodes around like 40 minutes or so for now. Maybe if I get into more stuff later on, I can either uh, lengthen them, or if people don't want to hear me talk as much, if they just want like a shorter, sweet version, I can do shorter, sweet episodes, So, uh, but just let me know what you guys think, what you guys want. But let me think here. I think I'm gonna do one more album, and then I'll call it goods. I'll probably do a part two of this episode. This is part one. I'll do part two. Talk a little bit more about modern albums that I like, that kind of hit me hard now, uh, versus back then. Um, but I'll talk about one more album before I cease this episode. And that album that I'm going to talk about is Nevermind. Now, I know what you're thinking. Like, oh, geez, he likes Nevermind. Wow, he thinks he's so punk rock, and I bet he has it on vinyl too. What a cool hipster dude. Do people even use the word hipster anymore? Is that even a thing? I don't even know. I don't. I have no idea. But no, Nevermind actually means a lot to me. Like, and I know probably a lot of people say that they went through like a grunge phase, but I was around 15. It's so crazy because I listened to like heavier bands before Nirvana. Like I knew Nirvana was a thing, but I didn't like dive into it. Like I heard their music. That's a lot of these albums though too. Like I had heard the music, but I never really like took a deep dive into it. And that's what I like to do with music. I like to take a deep dive with it and fully comprehend what I'm listening to, and fully get a grasp of like what this band is trying to say, or what this artist is trying to say. And that's when I'm like, okay, I actually listened to that album, versus like just hearing a song or two by like a band on like the radio or some shit. I don't know. But first time I heard this album, like all the way through, I think I was like 15 or 16. No, I think I was younger than that. I think I was younger than that. I'm trying to think. I think I was like 15. Yeah, I had to have been like 15. It was like, I think I was in like eighth grade. Eighth grade, big year, awful year. If you haven't seen the Bo Burnham movie, Eighth Grade, I highly recommend it. It's fantastic. That man, that man, he is making some moves right now. But and I've always dug his comedy too. Like that shit is amazing. Musical comedy is the best comedy, and it's kind of dying out right now, and it's kind of making me sad. I don't like that. I don't like the fact a lot of comics love that fact. Like I watch a comic who talks about being in like the comedian industry, if I can speak, blah blah, blah. But being in like the comic industry, and he's talking about how musical comedians are dying out. It's like not a thing anymore, and that makes me upset because Bo Burnham, I can't even speak anymore because Bo Burnham like perfected that shit, and I loved everything he did, Um, and I know that there's probably a ton of a ton of music comedians in the past too, but I don't know any of them. But uh, I heard a comedian say it was dying out, and that just makes me upset. But anyway, eighth grade, great movie, fantastic movie. I believe it's directed and written by Bo Burnham. I think it might be produced too, but I'm not sure. But yeah, I was in back to the main thesis of the what I'm trying to get at. I was in eighth grade, excuse me, and I was, you know how that shit goes. You know how that shit go. Hey, running through the six with my woes. I am in eighth grade. Ooh, I am in eighth grade. Yeah. You know how that shit go. Yeah, running through the six with my woes. So I was basically running through the six with my woes when I when I was in eighth grade, and I was like, you're really down on your luck at that age, and you're transitioning into high school, depending on where you go to school, I guess. But my high school was ninth grade. That was our freshman year. No, I'm pretty sure that's how it is everywhere. Cause 4 years, freshman, sophomore, yeah, that's how it is everywhere. Eighth grade, what am I talking about? I'm stupid. But anyway, eighth grade, and you're going into freshman year, and I'm pretty sure it was summer of eighth grade, and or maybe it was like, I'm not really sure. I can't really remember this clearly, because it was just a shitty time, and you don't really want to remember that clearly. And I remember finding like a full version of the album somewhere. I think one of my relatives or someone, I listened to it like on a CD. I didn't listen to it like streaming wise. I listened to Nevermind on a CD. I don't remember where I got it though. Um, because I remember the cover art for this album is bananas. It's not like one of my favorite cover arts, but it's a very iconic cover art. If you saw it, you'd be like, "Oh yeah, that's a Naked Baby album." But cuz it kind of like pushed me away from listening to it actually. Now that I'm like thinking about it, cuz I was like, "What the fuck? There's a Naked Baby on this album? Like I don't want to listen to this weird shit." But I also would always watch like Watch Mojo videos around that time. Like I was like 14, 15. I'd watch Mojo videos on YouTube, and like they would talk about like most influential bands, whatever, blah blah blah, and Nirvana was on one of them, and they showed like like little snippets of like songs, on certain albums like Inurito and Nevermind. I hope I'm saying that right. But or Bleach, I guess too. They'd show like small tidbits. They can't play the full song though. So I was like, okay, I hear all this hype about this band, and I don't know how I got into that grungy kind of mood. Um, I guess that's just kind of what being 14 does to you. Running through the six with your woes. Anyway, yeah. So I found the CD somewhere. I think one of my parents might have had it. One of my relatives had it or something, and I snagged that bad boy. And I didn't have my portable CD player anymore, actually, um, which is fortunate because those things sucked. Pretty sure mine broke or something, some stupid shit, because those things are asinine, and I didn't have those awful little headphones anymore. Those little wraparound headphones. But I had, normal stuff. I'm pretty sure I had like a. I'm trying to think if I had one of those like stereo systems, um, where it had like a CD player and then like a record player and then like a cassette player like in it, but you could like plug your headphones in and listen to it that way too. And I listened to it that way. I don't know why. I could have easily just looked it up and listened to it online, but I remember listening to that album um, on CD on a physical copy, and after hearing that, I was like, this is probably all I'm gonna listen to for the next fucking 2 years. Help me get through my woes. My my eighth grader woes. Help me get through that shit. But yeah. So first time I listened to that album, I was pretty blown away. I didn't like love it at first because it was so different. It was so different compared to like anything else I ever listened to. Um, and that is actually what transitioned me into listening to alternative bands like different alternative bands like let me think, like Smashing Pumpkins and some other alternative bands I can't really think of off the top of my head. It also turned me more to alternative metal later on, which is crazy because I heard the Rage Against the Machine album way beforehand, but um, it never turned me into bands like System of a Down and what's another band I'm trying to think of? Um, I guess Pantera. Yeah. No, not really. That's more metal, but uh, more alternative bands. I guess System of a Down is more alternative. Uh, oh, Sublime. Sublime. Bands like Sublime, Smashing Pumpkins, like 90s alternative bands, you know. And Nevermind is what turned me to those. So it's a very important album uh, for me because if I didn't listen to Nevermind, I wouldn't have listened to any of those alternative bands at all from the 90s. It's a process. I think I listened to in order to listen to certain bands, you have to listen to other ones. So I believe I got pretty lucky with the way I listened to them. Besides Rage, I listened to that way early on. Uh, no, I guess I guess I was like 12. 12. Is that what I said earlier? Yeah, I think so. Gotta stick to my stories. Stick to my stories. But yeah, I guess I was like, yeah, 12 when I listened to that. But never mind what I can say about that album besides the obvious. It is literally its own world. That album is just its own fucking world. Um, Sparked a movement. It's the sad boy days, Get into your sad boy vibe. Now it's like it's so crazy to me that like music genres go in circles. Like like a music genre will redefine itself every like so many years. And I love it. I love what's happening with hip hop and like punk rock right now and the way they're like uh fusing together. I love that. Like artists like Juice World and who's another artist that's like big right now. Um, X, that the guy that died. I guess it was last year now. Was it 2 years ago? I don't know. But the hip hop artist who died, R.I.P. X, 2 years ago or what, something like that. Uh, but I love what they're doing, what they did, what well, I guess Juice World is probably a better example of like the sad boy kind of vibe. I love what they're doing to this grunge sound that Nirvana kind of created, you know, like it was like a start of a new era. And when I first listened to Nevermind, it was exactly what I needed to hear at that point in time. Does that make sense? Yeah. It was exactly what I needed to hear at that age. Uh, it's crazy how like you get pulled towards something like that. Well, with music, that's kind of how it works with me. Music is the best way. It's one of the best out. It's one of the best hobbies to take your mind off stressful situations, I think. But at that point in time, uh, I I wasn't enjoying life. Like most kids that are like, 14, they're like, oh, like they don't know, like, and if you are like 14 and you're listening to this, it's all good. Like it's all good. I know shit's hard, and I can't even imagine what you're going through with like all this new social media shit, because we didn't have that like as intense as like these new generations do. But like, I'm gonna end this on a positive note, for all the youngsters out there, that are like in their fields and running through the six with their woes, and listening to sad boy music like this new punk emo kind of hip hop fusion. Got some news for you. Just check in. It's all good. It's all good, and you don't gotta be sad boy all the time. You don't have to be a sad boy. You know what I'm saying? Like this music, it does help. It does help because it's a very it helps relate to what you're going through, but to a point, like listening to Nevermind then was a whole ordeal, and it still holds up today to me listening to it now, but just the like what you go through at that age, it really emphasized like the sad boy effect, in me personally, and I'm sure a lot of people are going through that as well, like kids now with this new kind of emo kind of like hip hoppy, um, punk rocky emo genre that's exploding, this sad boy genre. And I guess what I'm trying to get to with this, what this point I'm trying to get to is Nirvana kind of created this sound, and for that reason uh, alone, I would put them in like my top. If I had a top 20, which I don't, I'd put Nevermind specifically over the other two albums easily because it was the one that blew up and went mainstream. I would put that one in my top 20 if I had one, which I don't. But yeah, so those are a few albums that are really, really important to me, that I thoroughly enjoyed when I, first started listening to music and really getting into it. Those are a few. There's just a few. I have a huge list. Yeah, it's pretty fucking big, but probably not gonna go through them all. I'm probably just gonna go through a few, whatever I'm feeling when I'm talking. Whenever I'll just feel it out. Like that's kind of what I did here. I had a big list and I had no particular order. I was just like, yeah, I think I might talk about that one now because I really like that one. That means a lot to me. I knew I was going to talk about Nevermind at some point because I was like, I got to get that out there because that one's really important. And if you are younger and you're listening to this podcast, and you really thoroughly enjoy like these grungier hip hop artists. And I'm sure like Lil Peep is a perfect example now that I'm thinking about it. If you enjoy Lil Peep, I guess Juice World is a very good example as well. Now that I'm thinking about it, they're both very good examples of like punk rocky hip hop. Um, yeah, they're both pretty good. Um, in fact, I enjoyed both of their albums very much so. I guess Post Malone's kind of up there too, but in that same boat, but not really. He's kind of pop more than anything. But anyway, if uh, if you enjoy that kind of music, that sad boy music, and you're going through that sad boy stage of your uh, teenhood, I'd highly recommend you go through and listen to some some '90s alternative bands, some '90s grunge bands like Nirvana, and then from there, you'll probably move on to like Smashing Pumpkins. I don't know why those are the only. That's the only other like '90s band I can think of. Offspring. There's another one. There's another fantastic '90s alternative band. I don't know. I have a laptop right here, and I have my phone on me too. I just like told myself, nope, not gonna use your phone while you're doing this. But now that I'm thinking about it, it'd be a fantastic tool. I could find dates for the albums. I could find the whole list of songs, and I could be like, "Oh shit, yeah, that's a good one on that album." But yeah, you'll go through that whole. I think it's important for new generations to go through and listen. If you are a music lover, I think it's important for new generations to go through and listen to older music from the past, because then you'll have an understanding of why the music that you love today sounds the way it does. Because without any of that grunge influence, or Alice in Chains is another fantastic example. I'm thinking of them right now. I'm not even looking them up. Okay, maybe I'm looking them up. But yeah, those bands are very essential to that whole grunge sound. But Nevermind in particular really moved me as a child, and I'll never forget that album. And even listening to it today, it holds up. Um, yeah, it's still a fantastic album. Uh, but the artwork is kind of weird. But who who does like normal artwork anymore? All artwork today is, or cover art is goofy as shit most of the time anyway. But you enjoy it because it's art. But yeah, so those are a few of my favorite albums, I guess you could say, from my childhood, and albums I still thoroughly enjoy today. I love these albums still today. Especially the Maroon 5 one just holds up really well to me. I don't know why. I really love that album. Um, I'm trying to think. They all kind of just are fantastic in their own way. But yeah, so those are a few albums that I listened to while growing up, and I really enjoyed. So if you are younger, like I said, check out these older bands and this older music. I think it's really important you hear this stuff so you know what you're listening, who inspired the artists that you listen to today. And if you're an artist yourself and you really want to become a musician, I would say that you have to listen to tons of different genres in order to grasp what your sound is going to be, what you want to produce, and what you want to make. So I think it's very important that you go back and you listen to older music as well. And I'll dive more into even older music than I think the oldest I went is 91. Nirvana, yeah. That's 91, right? I don't know why I just don't look it up, but yeah. So I'll go back even further. I'm gonna do a part two, I'm sure, because I got a big list. So I'm just gonna do another part because fuck it, why not? But anyway, that was my first episode of the Unnamed Podcast. I'll come up with the name at some point, but as of right now, no name. Anyway, that was my first episode. Hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned for the next one. I'm going to start doing these. I think I'm going to do these every week. Just sit down with the microphone, fucking talk about some stupid shit, throw it up, and if you enjoy it, great. That's awesome. That's fantastic. Stay tuned for the next one. And if you want me to shorten it up, I went a little over the time that I planned on going. I wanted like 45 minutes, but it looks like I'm shooting for 10 minutes over. I'll probably keep them all. Since it's the first one, I'm like, might as well, go over a little bit, just kind of, since I had that whole background that I had to get into, like as of what this is and everything. But yeah, I'll probably shoot for like 45 minutes for most of them. And if you enjoy it, awesome. Stay tuned, and I will see you in the next one.